A couple of years ago, there was an individual who lied to the Associated Press. The Associated Press then put out a fake story. I responded by correcting the story and doing journalism. I was able to look up some facts and verify this individual did lie and the AP was wrong. YouTube took down my video. Why? Because if the establishment says it, so be it. And who are you but a pathetic, lowly YouTuber? Okay, sure. Well, it turns out a couple days later, when the AP issued an apology and a retraction, my video was reinstated. We now have another story. And I would like to just let you all know, you've seen the title of the video, so you probably have a general idea. The media, the establishment, these big tech companies have nothing but disdain for you. You are nothing. You are stupid. But time and time again, they prove they have no idea what they are talking about. My friends, NPR tweets. A new poll finds 40% of respondents believe in a baseless conspiracy theory that the coronavirus was created in a lab in China. There is zero evidence for this. Scientists say the virus was transmitted to humans from another species. Okay. Well, you may remember this story from September. Chinese virologist posts report claiming COVID-19 was made in a Wuhan lab. This from the New York Post. This is a certified, verifiable news source, one of the oldest, I believe the oldest paper in the country. We then have, finally, from New York Magazine, the lab leak hypothesis, January 4th, 2021. For decades, scientists have been hot-wiring viruses in hopes of preventing a pandemic, not causing one. But what if? That's right. But what if? You see, there are actually scientists who believe it's kind of both stories, right? The idea that there was a virus transmission from a bat to a person or so, and that it was being researched, the virus was being researched in a lab, and then it got leaked. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not asserting one way or another. In fact, my big criticism here is the media. I can't tell you definitively anything about COVID. I'm not a scientist. I can read NPR saying y'all are crazy. I can read about a Chinese whistleblower claiming the inverse is true. And then I can show you the New York Intelligencer, the New York Magazine, saying there is a hypothesis it came from a lab. YouTube probably would remove. They may actually remove this video. And I'm not even exaggerating. They may actually take this down. I recently did an episode of the Timcast IRL podcast with Peak Prosperity, a YouTube channel, Dr. Chris Martinson. Check him out. He's a smart guy. And there were, he was talking about, we talked a lot about censorship and how he, as a PhD, I believe is a PhD pathologist, was being told he wasn't allowed to speak to these things. How insane is it? Okay, I want to show you what NPR has to say, and then I want to show you what the New York Magazine break down how they do these conspiracies. But let me explain to you my complaint here, my whinging on the internet as per usual. They tell us the world is on fire. They tell us that global warming is going to destroy everything. I hear that. I see things, and I say, okay, I'm on board. I remember the Deepwater Horizon oil spill or explosion, whatever you want to call it. Or what was the other one? Way back when I was a kid. I don't even know when this was. Exxon Valdez, I think it was. The tanker spill. These things make me angry. I don't like seeing this stuff killing animals, spreading, polluting everything. It's awful. It really is. Now, here's the problem. They say, we are the experts and you must believe us. You are not allowed to spread ideas. Only we, the establishment elites, are allowed to tell you what for. And we are telling you now, the Great Reset is a requirement to save this planet. Why, what better time to enact a change to global capitalism than during a crisis like this pandemic? And then what do we hear in the early 2020? Dr. Fauci says, don't wear a mask. We hear from the Surgeon General, don't wear a mask. Then it turns out they were lying. In fact, Fauci admits we didn't want to run out of PPE. We wanted the medical workers to get them before anyone else. Okay, I get it. I understand why he did it, but he did. He lied. Then we learn that Fauci says actually herd immunity percentages. We need way more people to have immunity before we can get to herd immunity, which means so enough people have it where it stops the virus from spreading, basically. He was lying to us. He admitted it. They've been lying this whole time. They would tell me that I am a conspiracy theorist for simply reading a story from the Washington Post. And this is it's frustrating. So forgive me if it's a little more personal, But I'll tell you this. Early on in the year, I think it was April, the Washington Post ran a story about the lab leak hypothesis. I read the story. The Daily Mail also had a story about the lab leak hypothesis. I think it was citing actually the Washington Post. I talked about this. Then they claim I'm the one pushing the conspiracy theories. Why? Because I'm not part of the establishment elites. I don't get access to their protections. Now, I think it's fair to point out I have contacts at Google and YouTube, and I probably have it better than a lot of people on this platform. But how insane is it that NPR runs this story? They say, even if it's bonkers, poll finds many believe QAnon and other conspiracy theories. A significant number of Americans believe misinformation about the origins of the coronavirus and the recent presidential election, as well as conspiracy theories like QAnon, according to a new NPR Ipsos poll. I'm going to stop right there. The QAnon stuff, I know a bit about it. I don't want to pretend like I know everything about it, but for the most part, I ignored it for a long time. I know a little bit right now, enough to say it's bunk. I mean, I'm sorry, man. There's just way too much bunk garbage throughout all of the QAnon stuff. And I've had conversations with people and I'm like, you really need to look in the history of this stuff. And it's not just that. I know individuals who have privy access to information and they think they know who Q is. Or I should say the person who's claiming to it seems like it's a lot of wishful thinking. I'll put it that way. It's people who just want to live in a certain world, and that's fine. Hold on. But I'm not here to rag on the Q people. I'm not here to rag on regular people who don't trust the mainstream media. I'm here to blame the mainstream media. Do you know why there are people who believe things like the QAnon conspiracy theory stuff? Because they turned on the news one day and they said, there is no Hunter Biden scandal. Everything you saw on the internet is fake news. Go home and vote for Joe Biden. And they were like, wow. I was talking to a guy the other day. He's like, nah, that stuff's not real. That Hunter Biden. I'm like, what do you mean? They came out initially, Hunter Biden, all fake news. After the election, boom, confirmed. Hunter Biden under investigation. So is Jim Biden, I think that's his name, Joe Biden's brother. So you mean to tell me I turn on the TV and you lie and lie and lie, and CNN's like there's nothing here, it's fake news. NPR, oh, hey, NPR. They issued a statement saying, we're not going to cover distractions, this Hunter Biden scandal. Then the election happened, and they say Joe Biden won. Now, he won all these states, and the media comes out and says it. So now you have regular people seeing NPR say there's no Hunter Biden story, and Joe Biden has won. And then the news breaks, and NPR covered this as well. Confirmed Hunter Biden facing criminal probe. Joe Biden's brother facing criminal probe for money laundering related to scandalous deals with China. And then all of a sudden you have these people saying, wait a minute. You told me last month this story was fake news. Wait a minute. You told me Joe Biden won. So is it any surprise there are people who don't believe it? I'm not surprised at all. The mainstream media is pumping out garbage all the time. So if you get a person who tells me to trust the plan because they think Mike Pence is going to be arrested because he's secretly working with, I'm sorry, man, Linwood's tweets. I'll just put it that way. You've seen him. He's got too many. You come to me and say all that stuff. I'm going to be like, dude, that's ridiculous. Then you come to me with the NPR stuff and I laugh and I say, guess what? It's ridiculous too. Why should I sit here and take this from NPR when then you turn around and you get New York Magazine coming out with this stuff? How dare these people? And that's why I say, you know what? The system is broken. You know why? Why should I, or anyone for that matter, be it a moderate, a liberal, a Trump supporter, try to convince anyone that the media is full of it when they don't care and they publish lie after lie, flip-flopping about, making no sense? Who do I trust? New York Mag or NPR? I don't know. The New York Post came out and said there's a whistleblower. They said that a Chinese virologist was claiming it was made in a lab. And they said the New York Post is lying. It's fake news. So then the New York Mag comes out and says, actually, how dare these people? Here's what they said over at NPR. 40% of respondents said they believe the coronavirus was made in a lab with China, even though there is no evidence for this. None. Even though in September, a Chinese researcher made a claim. I'm not saying a claim is definitive proof. Evidence is defined as signs or indications of something. If a Chinese, she's a virologist, right? Chinese virologist comes out and says, Yes, I believe this to be the case. Here's our paper. Well, now you have evidence. Is it definitive proof? No, but it is a sign or indication. You see how they lie? Scientists say the virus was transmitted to humans from another species. What they don't tell you is that the lab leak hypothesis, according to New York Mag, is that yes, that's true, but they think someone may have been trying to create a vaccine for the virus and it accidentally leaked. That's what they're saying. I'm not saying it's true. Hey, don't take my word for it. That's New York Mag saying it. I'm actually going to just say YouTube's rules are correct and whatever YouTube wants me to say is true and correct. How about that, YouTube? They'll probably take the video down anyway, but I don't care. I'm sick of this stuff, man. They say 1/3 of Americans believe that voter fraud helped Joe Biden win in the 2020 election, despite the fact that courts, election officials, and the Justice Department have found no evidence of widespread fraud that could have changed the outcome. Do you see how these scumbags do this manipulation? Let me read that for you again. 1/3 of Americans believe that voter fraud helped Joe Biden win. Then they say, despite the fact they didn't find widespread evidence of fraud that could have changed the outcome. Those are two different things, you duplicitous scumbags. What they should say is 1/3 of Americans believe voter fraud helped Joe Biden win. That's it. They believe it. And then you can say there have been claims of fraud and thousands of sworn affidavits, though none of it has been definitively proven. Well, that'd be a fair statement. What does widespread fraud have to do with fraud helping Joe Biden? You see how they frame things. Fraud helping Joe Biden could be microscopic. Bill Barr said, of course there's fraud. We just haven't seen it on a scale that would have changed the results. That's very, very different. It's manipulation. It's the game they play. Dirty, dirty tricks. You know, I'm so sick of it. The poll results add to mounting evidence that misinformation is gaining a foothold in American society and that conspiracy theories are going mainstream. How about Russiagate? Yeah. That was actually like 3 or 4 years, even before Donald Trump won, claiming that he was working with Russia. How insane. They say, especially during the pandemic, this has raised concerns about how to get people to believe in a baseline reality, said Chris Jackson, a pollster with Ipsos. NPR, answer me this. How do I believe in baseline reality when New York Magazine is saying there's a hypothesis of a lab leak and you're saying it's a baseless conspiracy theory? Who am I supposed to trust? There's no consistency here at all. New York Post is supposed to be good. Oh, but they're right wing. Well, NPR is, I guess, left wing, and they're saying it's not true. But then New York Mag says it is. Who do I trust? Guess what? People just choose to trust one source. For a lot of people, it's a random person on the internet who has the name Q, for Q clearance, I suppose, or Donald Trump himself. It's funny. There are memes going around where there's one, it's like Trump says you can't trust the vice president, you can't trust his administration, you can't trust Congress, you can't trust this group or that group or this group, but you got to trust him. How absurd is that? And I'm like, personally, I think it's absurd. Trump says don't trust these people, but trust me. Fine. But what happens when you can't trust any of these people? Well, then people choose to support their president and they say, I'll just trust him because everyone else is a liar, as far as I can tell. Who's lying? Is New York Mag lying that there's scientists who believe this? Or is NPR lying that there's no evidence? Is this Chinese virologist lying? Tell me who's lying. All I can tell you right now is I have 3 stories that contradict each other and I can't tell you which one's true. I can only tell you that they will ban me from YouTube. They will ban you from Twitter if you pick the wrong one. They say what this poll really illustrates to me is how willing people are to believe things that are ludicrous because it fits with a worldview that they want to believe. Okay, New York Mag, take a look at this. In the graph, they say what is that? I don't know what color that is. A turquoise teal kind of color. That's not teal. It's a bluish green. It means true. Gray is don't know, and the orange is false. COVID-19 was created in a lab. 40% believe it. 29% are not sure, and only 32% say it's false. That, to me, is truly amazing. There are more people who believe COVID came from a lab, was created, than there are people who don't believe it. Look at this. Incorrect statements. This is incredible stuff. Let me blow your mind for a second. The majority of protests that occurred this summer were violent. 47% believe it, 16 don't, and 38% say it's false. NPR says that is incorrect. Is that a joke? It's a fact. Now they went, yes, But only 7% were violent. By whose definition is violent? Majority of the protests that occurred this summer were violent. Define violence. The left says words are violent. So are we going by their scale? Well, if we were, then this is a correct statement. You see the problem there? It's manipulation. Correct statements. I love this one. They say Barack Obama was born in the U.S. 19% don't believe it. They say there is no evidence vaccines cause autism. 51% believe that. Humans landed on the moon. 72% believe it. 20% aren't sure. And they say that 9/11 was caused by Al-Qaeda. 73% believe it's true. 20 aren't sure. And 7 do not believe it. There's an interesting question here about things that we believe and things that we don't. And what you might notice from the incorrect versus correct statements graph here on NPR is there is one easily definable function or feature to these statements. Have you figured it out? Let me tell you. They say the protests, COVID-19, Satan worshiping elites, kidnapping kids, humans and climate change, and mass shootings being hoaxes. Those are the incorrect statements where most people, well, to varying degrees, people believe or don't believe it. The correct statements are overwhelmingly believed or are unsure. The key feature differentiation here is when they occurred. Barack Obama, his presidency, vaccinations, humans landing on the moon, and September 11th, those are old things. That happened a long time ago. Vaccines have been around for a long time. Protests, COVID, those are new things. And those are the two things where people believe what they claim to be incorrect. The point is the media broke. News is dead. Journalism died a long time ago. Now, look, I don't want to, gloss over the fact that I'm mentioning the lab leak hypothesis, but that's all it really is. There's not too much I have to tell you about the story from The Intelligencer. They go through great detail about what people believe. There's the gist of it here from the New York Post. They say an American novelist is breathing new life into the theory that COVID-19 was the result of a lab leak in China, a notion that several scientists agree is possible. In a nearly 12,000-word cover story for the New York Magazine, Nicholson Baker floats the idea that the virus that causes COVID-19 was tampered with by money-hungry scientists eager to capitalize on a new emerging disease. Saying, I keep returning to this basic puzzling fact, he writes. This patchwork pathogen, which allegedly has evolved without human meddling, first came to notice in the only city in the world with a laboratory that was paid for years by the U.S. government to perform experiments on certain obscure and heretofore unpublicized strains of bat viruses, which bat viruses then turned out to be, out of all the organisms on the planet, the ones that are most closely related to the disease. What are the odds? We had Chris Martenson on the show, and he mentioned, I don't know if he said this, but he mentioned that there are certain things about this virus that make it very potent or like easily transmissible. He was saying, I think he may have said this off the show, that usually when a virus jumps from an animal to a person, it's very, very bad. Like it barely works, right? It's got to connect to certain receptors. But then what you end up getting is the ones that do connect can start reproducing more successfully, and then that version spreads and it affects humans. But it's usually jumping from species is weak at first. This one hit hard, and it's entirely possible these things happen. But what they're saying now in the story is it's, I guess, too perfect. All of these things coming together. But I thought NPR said there's no evidence. So who do you trust? What are the odds, he says? The story quotes several scientists and experts who say the virus has infected 85 million and killed 1.8 million globally, likely escaped from the lab in Wuhan. There is a reasonable chance that what we are dealing with is the result of a lab accident. Alina Chan, a scientist at Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, told Baker in July. But she noted there was a chance the disease developed naturally, which has long been suspected after being linked to bats early on in the pandemic. And that's true. It is. A lot of people like to point out, oh, it's too perfect. It's got these things on it, these receptors or whatever. It's like, listen, sometimes you win the lottery. Sometimes astronomical odds happen. Like, that's why I say Donald Trump could win tomorrow. Side note, I'm just putting it at astronomical odds. I just don't think it's going to happen. But sure, sometimes these things happen. The bigger problem I have, the more definitive thing I can say is we're being suppressed, repressed, and oppressed. All of them. All of the presses. We're getting all of them. Our conversations are being suppressed. People are being barred from churches and being oppressed. And conversations are being depressed in the algorithm. And that's based on the idea that the elites know better than you. that the people who run these platforms and run these news organizations are smarter than you, and thus they should make decisions for you. But time and time again, it turns out they're wrong. That's the problem. I mentioned the oil spills. I want to save the planet. I want to make sure humans can flourish. I don't like the idea that we're like yeast in a bottle, eating all the sugars and farting ourselves to death. Resources are finite, and we can't grow exponentially in the physical world, maybe in the digital world. The problem? The people who are advocating for changes to our lives to solve these problems are wrong all the time. And then we see what the Democrats do once they get power. They go out and party, they get their hair done, they ignore their own rules. Your business is shut down, but they're allowed to do whatever they want. So I combine these things. I see elites who are breaking the rules, who aren't scared at all of COVID. I see them using the crisis to enrich themselves. And then I see them lying and being wrong, but telling us we aren't allowed to speak or share ideas. And their duplicitous lackeys in mainstream media will do whatever to freak people out and burn it all to the ground. I wonder, will there be any reconciliation or penalty or justice for all of the journalists who lied to us early on in the pandemic? To the Democrats who told us to come out and party. Come on down to Chinatown, Nancy Pelosi said. Don't be racist. Is there going to be any penalty for that? No? Then don't be surprised when people stop believing you. Don't be shocked to find that there are people holding up signs that say Q because they don't believe you anymore. There's no baseline reality when you can't get your story straight. So I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know why it even matters all that much about the lab leak hypothesis anyway. Sure, it's in these mainstream news outlets, but we should be talking about solving the problems. But I digress. I run the risk of having this video deleted and getting a strike on my channel for simply reading you mainstream news. And that's why I'm going to rag on the mainstream news and YouTube. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. over at youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.